So the Mental Wellbeing in Higher Education group is a professional network of colleagues who work in universities across the UK in roles that are directly supporting student and staff mental health and wellbeing. So they're both academic roles, so it could be research positions, those in teaching, but also student services. So those in both clinical and non-clinical student services roles, including kind of wellbeing, mental health and counselling. But there's a much broader reach to our membership. And we are very interested, and we spend a lot of time thinking about both the kind of strategic trends that are going on around student mental health and staff mental health, but also the kind of day-to-day kind of operational reality of being in our roles at this moment in 2026. And we organise our events, so we have an annual conference and we have a number of different events through the year, and we very much want them to be both strategically relevant so that people can feel they're stepping outside their institution and are getting a sense of what's going on in the bigger picture. But we also want them to be very practical and very valuable in terms of experiential learning and being part of a community of practice. So we use evidence-based practice, and we invite colleagues from across the UK to come and tell us about the things that they are doing, that they are continuing to do well, that they may have been doing for a long time, and how they're approaching them, and they might be developing them, and how they're evaluating them. But we also ask people to come and tell us about the new things they're trying. So this could be in relation to teaching and assessment, it could be in relation to student support, it could be about cross-campus or cross-institutional approaches, the whole university approach to good student mental health. It can be about many, many things. When people think about this area, they kind of have a moment where I think we stop, and with pride, we feel very good about the progress that's been made. We're seeing increased awareness and increased recognition and valuing of the importance of thinking about the emotional and psychological experiences of students and staff in our institutions. And we're opening up, or we have opened up some very important conversations. But we're also noticing kind of threads of kind of confusion and insecurity and anxiety for both students and staff. And some of this is about the areas that we're maybe not being clear enough about. It's about the boundaries of care between universities and external services such as the NHS. It's about what exactly is within our roles and responsibilities, whether we're academic staff or student support staff. And it's about how we can tell the difference between poor well-being and levels of significant distress that are very normative and mental illness, and where does one begin and the other end. And these are not easy things to define, and often in the moment they can be very difficult to tell apart. And we're also, I think, very preoccupied with the question of how we maintain momentum and commitment to this work in the context of the current environment. There are very real material impacts around workloads and how we calibrate a compassionate, empathic response to need with the sustainability of our services. And so with that in mind, this year's conference is really kind of thinking about two key things. It's thinking about the importance of balance, balance in our approach to student support and student and staff mental health, but it's also about sustainability. And how are we going to create and maintain sustainable services that we're proud of and we feel is doing good work, but not at the expense of either staff kind of burnout or students kind of, being potentially expecting a level of service that they may not be able to experience from their institution because because we're not treatment providers. And so our theme is, it's not about doing more, it's about doing it differently. And we're looking to the evidence base to say, how does integrating evidence-informed practices that are enabling of good mental health, that foster and create the conditions that foster good mental health. How are we doing that across the intersection of EDI and mental health work? How are we organising our teaching, learning and assessment, our approach to pedagogy, in a way that is about creating those fundamental conditions and the building blocks of good mental health and well-being, which are actually very similar to the building blocks of learning and personal and professional development? And how are we talking and how are we enacting compassionate boundaries and limits? How are we finding a way to be really clear about what can reasonably be expected from a university and what really we cannot provide? And these are not easy conversations to have, and I think part of our work as clinical professionals working in education is to find the language and to stay with some of these more difficult topics. So we very much hope you'll come and join us in Liverpool in May for this year's Mental Wellbeing in Higher Education Conference.